Hello, thanks for being in a brand new video. This time I have with me the Xiaomi Redmi Note 13 Pro 5G, and we're going to give it a full review. We need to get started. Do not get confused because there is also the Xiaomi Redmi Note Pro Plus, so the difference in the name is the word plus. In this case, we are talking about a step below that model, but its launch price in Mexico is 11,999 pesos. On the screen, you see the reference price in dollars, which is approximately $700. Surely it seems too high a price. In fact, in Mexico, prices are generally always higher than in other countries. But this particular device is very expensive in Mexico compared to the price we could find in other countries. In fact, surely if you buy it from unofficial distributors, the price will be much more competitive. So from now on, we criticize Xiaomi's official price, which seems exaggerated to us. It is distributed officially in many places, in Telcel, Liverpool, Electra, Mercado Libre, and other distributors. But I insist that the official distribution handles a very high price, and surely if you find it in unofficial distributors, the price will be much lower. So it is a difficult device to analyze, because surely throughout the review, I will be constantly criticizing the price. Because it's not a bad device, but for the launch price, I'm probably going to criticize a lot of things. So now join me for a more in-depth look at what it has to offer. Aesthetically, it will be a device that does not disappoint as it has considerably reduced bezels, making perfectly good use of the front. In fact, the bottom bezel is also very reduced, so this could be considered a strong point because it really does become quite an attractive design. And it is not only attractive but also resistant as this front comes with Gorilla Glass Victus protection, a level of protection that we usually find in more expensive devices. So in that sense, it definitely does have strengths. On the right side are placed the volume buttons and the power button. On the top we find several things. For starters, the headphone jack, which is something that some devices are abandoning in this price range, so it could be attractive. We also have a secondary audio output which, in conjunction with the headphone jack for calls, can make it enhance your sound experience. Then there's a microphone and finally infrared for this device to function as a universal remote control. The left side is completely clean and serves to give us a look at its thickness, which is 7.98 millimeters. At the bottom is placed the tray for the nano SIM card. In fact, in some countries you will be able to fit 2 SIM cards. In Mexico, if you buy it with Telcel, be sure that this second tray will be blocked. Then we will find another microphone, the USB-C port, and finally the main speaker. This device has a weight of 187 grams, so it's considerably light, and as you notice, I have a color version called Navy Green, but it is also available in other color editions called Stellar Black and Boreal Purple. On camera, I feel this device looks predominantly green, although in real life I feel it looks much more blue. It's honestly a nice color, and it's a device that doesn't get fingerprints on it easily. So its design, on an aesthetic level, I think is very positive both on the front and on the back. The camera module seems to have an acrylic piece that's a little more reflective than the rest of the body of the device, and honestly I like it. It will have IP54 level resistance but not IP68, so it resists splashes. However, it can't be submerged, so you have to be careful with water. Although with IP54, I think you already have a good level of safety in case it accidentally gets dropped in shallow water. The screen has very good quality. It is 6.67 inches in its diagonal, but the resolution is what comes to stand out the most because it is 1.5K, that is 2712 pixels by 1220. So it is a higher resolution than Full HD, which in many cases we do not see even in more expensive devices. So you're going to be able to appreciate the smallest details of multimedia content, and of course text are also going to look very sharp. And being an AMOLED display, it's definitely going to give us a very good contrast, also vivid colors and even good viewing angles as well. So from some side, the device is still going to display with very good quality all this content. So I think that in this price range is a screen that definitely does come to meet with good quality. In fact, when viewing HDR content, its maximum peak brightness is 1800 nits. So in that sense, it does stand out in its price range. It is a screen with a high brightness, and the minimum brightness can also be comfortable to use this device at night, although it does not include some additional dimming mode through the accessibility options. As you can see, it is a screen that shows very fluid movements as its refresh rate is 120 Hz, as we would expect in a device of this price. And another interesting fact is that its dimming rate is 1920 Hz, although that's hard to prove. But in summary, I could tell you that this is a display that could be comfortable to use because it avoids a lot of flicker, which is not noticeable to the eye, but it can fatigue the eye. So this we could say is a comfortable screen, and its touch sampling rate is also another highlight, which can go up to 2160 Hz when you're in high performance modes within gaming. So it can give you fast response in touches and gestures, at least in theory, but more on the result in games later. Xiaomi also includes a reading mode that is not only going to give you the different color, but it is also able to give you a customization to add texture to the screen so that it tries to look like paper. Although it obviously does not look 100% like paper, but it can give you a more comfortable reading experience. In addition, it will offer various color calibration settings for you to choose the one you like best, or you can manually customize a little deeper the level of color calibration that reaches the screen with different parameters. One positive thing about the sound is that not only does it have a speaker at the bottom, but also, as I mentioned, it has an additional audio output at the top. However, the lower output is the one that has more presence of bass frequencies, so the sound feels a little unbalanced. Fortunately, it has good quality, it does not distort at the highest volume, but I could not say that it is something extremely remarkable, as I told you from the beginning, because of the high price it has in Mexico. Let's listen to a small test, although remember that it is not the same to listen to it live. But something that I would like to highlight as a positive point is that not only will allow us to access Dolby Atmos without the need to have headphones connected, but we also have a specific equalizer. So in this way, you can completely customize how you want your speaker to sound. It's a 10-band equalizer that has presets, or you can manually set the sound. And this obviously gives you a very big advantage over other devices that don't offer an equalizer. And although it also offers a headphone jack so you can enjoy good quality audio from the cable, it also has the aptX adaptive codec so you can get good quality audio with compatible headphones. It also has the SBC, AAC and aptX standard codec, so I think you can get to meet in a good way in audio. Below you are going to hear an audio test recorded with the microphones of this device.
Esta es una grabación de audio hecha con los micrófonos integrados del Xiaomi Redmi Note 13 Pro 5G.
So I think the microphones pick up voices well. Next, you will see a video recorded with this device, setting the sound system in my living room at maximum volume to see if there is any distortion. I think that in very high volume scenarios, the microphones might lose a little bit of clarity. It's not really a big deal, but consider it in case you really like to take your cell phones to record concerts. The front camera has one of the largest in the series with f2.4 aperture and fixed focus. It is a camera configuration that we see on almost all Xiaomi devices. If you want to quickly open the camera, you can double press the volume down button, but this gesture comes disabled by default, so you have to enable it in the settings. Also, that gesture will only work with the screen off, so you don't really get a very fast camera opening experience. Fortunately, it can give you a very snappy experience by taking several pictures, so if you like to take a lot of pictures with your friends and then choose the best one, it will give you a snappy feeling. In the additional settings also has this option to activate the capture showing the palm of the hand, which works well enough. In the lower right corner, we can access the beauty options, which include very good parameters such as skin smoothness, making the face thinner and modifying the size of the eyes. With all these parameters set to the maximum, you can get to look very fake. With this same button, we can also access color filters that we can preview in real time. This front camera is going to give us a good level of detail, and even I think also a color rendering is considerably good. It's also a camera that offers a good level of range for some group shots, still maintaining a good level of detail despite having fixed focus. So I think the front camera leaves me with a good feeling. In fact, it includes a panoramic photography mode, so you could have an even wider picture, and despite being a panoramic front picture, I feel that it does have a good quality. Possibly some areas just look a little strange, but the result is positive overall. In interiors, it will also give us a good quality photo. It doesn't have as much detail, but you have to remember that we are in a low light scene, and I think it controls noise well, keeping color saturation well, at least high enough for its price range. In backlit scenes, the preview looks completely burnt out, but it must be remembered that it does have HDR, so the subsequent result is good enough. I think it makes a good balance of light and shadow, keeps the colors well within what is possible. Possibly we could ask for a little more contrast, but I think it is still an acceptable photo. At night, I also like the quality of photography that is able to offer us, maintaining a sufficiently high detail and good color rendering, plus it has a good noise control in the darkest areas. And in backlit night photography, which is one of the most complicated scenarios, I think it performs well. In fact, if you use the screen as a flash simulation, you could actually improve the result. And if you use the night mode, it should increase the level of detail, but honestly, I think it actually reduces it compared to when you don't use the night mode. And portraits at night with the front camera I think come out acceptable. Although I find it a bit of an outline on the face, I think it gives a slightly inconsistent result, but the level of detail is positive. Although when you take a portrait picture of yourself in the daytime, you're going to notice these inconsistencies in edge detection even more. So I feel like it's not a portrait specialist, plus it's not able to keep the foreground objects in focus. So the front portrait photography doesn't look good to me. On the back, the device incorporates the ultra-wide camera of 16mm with 8 megapixels of resolution in its sensor and f2.2 aperture with fixed focus. An ultra-wide camera that we could say that it is simple. Then the main camera is 23mm with a 200 megapixel sensor. That's possibly the highlight. And it also comes with f1.65 aperture, so it should have a good light input. It also has optical stabilization and autofocus. So definitely the most remarkable camera would be this one, because it can get to offer us very good quality compared against several competitors. But finally, it has a 2 megapixel macro camera with f2.4 aperture. And definitely this camera for me is completely useless. Next, let's try to capture number 3 to test how the capture speed is. And as you notice, the camera preview has some lag. So let's do a third test. Capturing at the moment, we see the number 3 on the cell phone screen to see what the result is. And apparently this device has a kind of buffer, because in the 3 results is practically a quarter of a second before when I took the picture. So if you're not the fastest to press the button, I think it can help you. To start a burst, you simply slide the shutter to the right, and in this case, it's going to give you a burst of 20 pictures. The start of the burst is also very fast, and that's a good thing, but on the downside, it's a burst that gives you very few pictures, unlike other devices that let you take the burst for longer. Again, the device shows a button in the bottom right corner where you can access the beauty options with a single parameter and color filters. The device also has artificial intelligence capture options, although in all our tests this option was disabled because this is the factory setting. By tapping on the screen, you can adjust the exposure and focus, although there is no lock button. But if you want more advanced settings, you can directly access the Pro mode, and from here, you can access to modify the white balance, the focus, the shutter speed that can go up to 30 seconds, also the ISO that can go up to 6400, and finally the exposure compensation. And note that a histogram is also enabled. In fact, it also has other tools like checking overexposed areas, enabling a focus peaking option. You can also modify the type of metering, but it doesn't allow us to take pictures in RAW, which I consider to be a weak point. And regarding the intelligent capture options, note that if you try to capture a document with artificial intelligence disabled, it doesn't show any options. But if you enable the artificial intelligence camera, immediately in the automatic mode, it will suggest you to enter the document mode so that it automatically detects the edges of this sheet. And initially it is only a cropped photo, but you can access more options to have an enhanced filter. This way you can have a much more professional scan. In fact, it also allows you to adjust the cropping, the borders, and you can also remove some notes that might be smudging your sheet. So it's a very good scanner. The only thing that would be missing would be to allow us to add more sheets to the same document, since in this case it is saved as an image and not as a PDF document, although you can export it to PDF in the print options of the system. But hopefully soon it will be an easier process. And QR codes will be recognized even with artificial intelligence disabled, although it is a button that is very small on the side, so it could go unnoticed by many people. But you can perform this QR code scanning task directly from the camera's main interface. The 200 megapixel photography notes that it does maintain that high level of detail, so this is definitely a plus point in case you are one of those people who want to have extremely high resolution photographs, although consider that they are quite heavy photographs, so it's not recommended that you take all your photos at this resolution. In motion scenarios, I think you are indeed able to have a good picture that doesn't look with a sweeping motion, neither with the main camera nor with the ultra-wide camera. Outdoors, I think the main camera maintains a good representation of colors, and if we go to appreciate the edges, I think we do not get to notice serious distortions. There is only a very slight chromatic aberration, so I think the main camera performs well. However, the ultra-wide camera I think has much more inaccurate colors, and above all, much chromatic aberration, as well as distortions in its edges. So, it is an ultra-wide camera that I honestly consider to be of low quality. However, remember that this device allows you to take advantage of the 200 megapixel camera to take pictures while maintaining optical quality by applying the 2x zoom setting, and it looks pretty good. Although it is curious because the manufacturer claims that at 4x it still retains optical quality. And in my tests, I honestly don't see optical quality at this zoom setting. In fact, it looks low on the level of detail it achieves and its maximum zoom is 10x, but again, I don't get to distinguish good quality in the zoom. Definitely that zoom could and should be improved through an upgrade. Indoors, I like that the ultra-wide camera manages to keep a good control of noise while maintaining good color saturation without being something spectacular, but the main camera definitely goes up a level, having more intense colors, better contrast, better level of detail, and even better control of noise because it is practically imperceptible. And interestingly, in this indoor setting, it seems to have a better job at zooming. Notice that in the 2x photograph it does seem to maintain optical quality, and the 4x photograph also gives the sensation of maintaining optical quality in some scenarios. Although I wouldn't go so far as to say it completely, but the quality of the 4x zoom does look good in this test. In backlit scenes the preview looks completely burnt out, and interestingly by default HDR is turned off. So this would be the result with those settings. Obviously, it is a very bad result with overexposed areas in the background giving little balance of light and shadow, and the same will happen with the ultra-wide camera where, by the way, in this type of backlit scenes even more chromatic aberration is revealed, which in itself we already saw that it was a weak point. But if you have HDR enabled, you can see how the result can be a little better. Although I honestly think they should improve it even more with an update, as it still burns some areas of the background. At night, the ultra-wide camera I think makes an acceptable performance, although the noise management is seen to produce a lot of grainy in the darker areas. And even though you use the night mode, the result still looks very similar. It doesn't seem to improve at all. And with the main camera, it improves in terms of noise handling because it does not generate so much grain. In addition to the highlights, I think it exposes them quite well without burning them completely. So the photography seems very good to me. The only thing I would like is that using the night mode, it will improve even more because when you use the night mode, it looks practically the same as with the automatic mode. And using 2x zoom where it maintains optical quality, I think the result is positive, although in this case the area of lights if you get to overexpose a little more than necessary. But in this setting, it is noticeable when you use the night mode, especially in the most illuminated area that manages to balance it in a better way, and I think it controls noise a little better. And if there is no light source present in the photograph, the ultra-wide camera, I think, has a barely acceptable result, but for the launch price in Mexico, we could say that it is unacceptable. And with the night mode, it doesn't look like it will get any better. The main camera has a slightly warm color representation and some overexposed areas. And again, with the night mode, there is no improvement. It seems that the result is exactly the same with the automatic mode as with the night mode. And with the 2x zoom setting, I think we have a good picture despite being in sufficiently high darkness. And here you do notice the difference when you use the night mode, saturating the colors a little more and giving them more intensity. For macro photography, the main camera is not able to be very close to the objects to focus them with good quality, although I think the photos do come out well, especially for the good color capture. If you apply 2x zoom on the camera, you can possibly get a better picture considering that it maintains optical quality. Although the focus is still not very uniform, so there are some areas that come out well focused and other areas that are not so well focused. So if you want a more uniform focus and you want to be very close, you can use the macro camera, which in this sense does give you a better experience. Although it does produce quite a bit of grain in some areas, so I don't find it a spectacular picture, but it is better than what the main camera can give us. So although I don't like the macro camera in this model, I feel that it is a little more justified due to the limitations of the main camera. And if you don't like the ultra-wide camera for this type of scenes where you require a lot of amplitude due to chromatic aberration and the low quality it has, remember that you can use the panoramic photography mode, although you don't gain as much vertical amplitude, but obviously it will be a much higher quality photograph with better color and better definition, although there are some areas where you still get to notice the merger between one photograph and another. It is not so noticeable, but it is not a perfect panoramic photograph. And finally, for portraits, as with the front camera, I feel that it does not have a very good treatment in edge detection, although in this case it is able to detect objects but not in its entirety, as there are some areas of the objects that will also be out of focus, so I do not feel it is very accurate. And also in backlight you will see overexposed background, so the portrait is not very good. For video recording, something positive is that this device does support the resolution in the main camera, but only with the main camera, because if you switch to the ultra-wide camera, the resolution will drop to full HD, so this device still maintains as recommended quality recording in full HD. When you start your video recording, notice that you cannot switch between the main camera and the ultra-wide camera, something that definitely dislikes a lot, plus it does not show some shortcuts or quick zoom presets, and we have in this case the button to pause and resume the content, or also to take pictures while you are recording, but there is no button to rotate the camera nor to turn on the flashlight, only there is a button to turn on the flashlight. There is only a button to create markers, and when you are watching your already recorded video, you can go directly to some point you have previously marked. The device also includes some color filters, but when you use them, you can't record video in 4K, and it also has a beauty mode with only one parameter, but if you use the beauty mode, the video quality goes down to HD. Inside the Pro mode, it also includes the video section, so you can perfectly access all these Pro video options as well. And while you are recording, you can also change some of these settings, the Pro video mode, if it can get to stand out, because in the price range, there are not many devices that support it. The video recording with the main camera is positive. I think the result is good with natural colors. I would not say with 100% accuracy, but the result looks good. I like to see the video in 4K with no time limit, unlike other manufacturers that limit the video recording to 15 minutes. But with the ultra-wide camera, definitely the colors are altered much more pale and a little strange, in addition to the chromatic aberration that is also present in the video recording, so it is not so advisable to record with this camera indoors. The ultra-wide camera curiously does not suffer so much, so still manages to capture the color well without having too much noise, although the level of detail looks a little low. Obviously will improve a lot if you record with the main camera, having better illumination, better color, and above all, more detail. So I insist that recording with the main camera is the most recommended in backlit scenarios. Sincerely, more surprise for good. I think it balances quite well the lights and shadows, obviously gives priority to illuminate the face, but does not sacrifice completely the illuminated areas, unlike other devices. Although if you get to feel the changes in lighting, but within what fits, I think it is a quality recording backlight sufficiently good with the ultra-wide camera. Remember that it is not so advisable to record, so in this case the scene comes out a little darker, although I do not think it does a bad job balancing lights and shadows at night. Again, with the ultra-wide camera, we will notice a little more noise than we would like, but honestly it is not so bad. Obviously the brightest areas will not be able to balance them well, and in the case of the darkest areas will not be able to pick up much lighting, confirming that it is not good in this sense. However, I emphasize that the camera does not do a good job in this sense, but I think it is not good in this sense. Good in this sense, however, I emphasize how well it handles the noise, as other devices could be much worse, but again, the most advisable will be to record with the main camera. With what we gain more level of detail, again, still does not have the ability to balance well the brightest areas, but that would require it to premium devices, and in the case of the darkest areas, I think it manages to capture in good detail and without noise such scenes, giving a good quality night video also. With respect to the stabilization, recording in 4K, if we are going to have digital stabilization, but you can get to feel some vibrations that are definitely not very nice, and these become even more noticeable when you go running, as it even seems that the focus comes to be battling. Then it is not recommended to record running with this device with the ultra-wide camera. I think it will go more unnoticed, this movement, even when running, so it would be more advisable to record with the ultra-wide camera these scenarios, but I told you that the ultra-wide camera captures the colors in a way that is not very nice. The device does not include a portrait recording mode, and the fast camera, if it can be in 4K with good stabilization, that is something remarkable, because there are other devices that your fast camera has a much worse quality. In this case, if you see a high quality video, and as I say, allows us to change the speed to our liking, the base will be 4x speed, but can go up to 1800x, so you could record even the growth of a plant, or also in approximately 150x. You could record movement of nature for a show, so the fast camera is possibly one of its strongest points by the good amount of options and quality that has. And in the case of slow motion, it can be in full HD at 120 frames per second, so you have a good quality definitely, or it can be slower up to 240 frames per second, but going down in quality to HD depends on you as a user, but I think it delivers in slow motion. I would have liked it to have a super slow motion mode, but that is not found here. The front camera offers a too narrow angle, so even though it has good stabilization, which is positive, it is necessary to stretch the arm a lot if you want to be well framed, and that ends up spoiling a little your video recording experience. Also backlit, you will notice that it is not able to balance lights and shadows well, so the illuminated backgrounds will burn virtually always because it gives priority to illuminate your face. Also remember that it has fixed focus, so you could not approach an object to focus, and that again will produce a simpler experience, although in this price range is not so common. To find cameras with autofocus also not being video in 4 cannot offer as much detail as if we could find in other devices in this price range. Indoors, I think the colors do not get to capture them very well, seem to be a little greenish, so I do not really like how it captures the image in these conditions. Also appears much more noise present, and the definition is lost. And at night, I think you lose even more level of detail. Then I think that while in photography we saw that this front camera behaved very well, I think in the video behaves much worse also if you are moving a lot, which is the sense of the videos loses even more level of detail, and in the darkest areas does not have any tool to illuminate your face, as we could see in the picture. So the experience, I think, could improve the front camera if it offers a fast camera mode with good stabilization, but remember that it is only in full HD, so it is not as remarkable. The front camera does not have a special slow motion mode, and curiously neither does it have a dual recording mode even within the short video mode as we saw in other Xiaomi devices, so it is quite limited in modes. This device comes with Android 13 factory and MIUI, and 14.0.6 IE comes outdated, and that is definitely a weak point in Android. And there is already the 14th version for quite some time and no longer used MIUI in recent Xiaomi devices, but HyperOS still this device. If you update both Android 14 and HyperOS but not coming factory updated wastes one of its 3 years of updates that has guaranteed software, also has 4 years of security patches, then the policy is good, but if it came factory updated would be even better. The software includes some attractive options such as always on display that allows you to have a cover or a clock to customize your device when it is locked. You can also change the style of animations to receive notifications with this same attractive effect, and also has the option of wallpaper carousel that personally I do not like, but in case you are one of those people that is available, this will be changing the wallpaper constantly. Some images will seem a little more attractive than others, but in general this is the option. Also includes a theme center where you can explore more content and different customization for your device, not only changing the wallpaper, but the lock screen icons, cover something, and much more. Also has different shortcuts and gestures like holding down the power button to call the Google Assistant, take a screenshot by sliding 3 fingers down, or also a partial capture by holding 3 fingers for a little longer and then sliding or drawing a specific figure. In this section there is the gesture to open the camera that I told you about a moment ago, and you can also turn on the flashlight by double tapping the power button, so it can be useful for some people too. It also includes a back tap option for you to configure the action you want to be performed. By default comes the action of taking a screenshot. Simply, you have to give 2 taps on the back and it works quite well. In fact, also supports a triple tap for you to choose some specific action. The one-handed mode is quite ugly because it only slides to the left and the right of the screen. It is quite ugly because it only slides down the content, but if you try to reach the other end of the screen, can become difficult if you have a little small hands. Supposedly also includes an assistant for the front camera when making video calls, but is only compatible with WeChat, so on this side of the world does not serve us for nothing. And we will find also the option of floating windows that we can open from the smart sidebar, or also at the time of receiving notifications we can slide down that notification, and that gesture honestly is pretty good, but by default, as I tell you, will be to open them from the sidebar. Something you should know is that it allows you to have open up to 2 applications in this floating mode. After that will be replacing the applications that you go opening. Also, YouTube is not compatible with this floating mode, although Instagram, if it is these windows, you can resize and also place them somewhere else, and if you want to minimize them, you can slide them to one of the sides, and finally to close them, just slide them from bottom to top. It also includes a heart rate reader using the optical fingerprint reader that has inside the screen. Also through the application My Remote, you can configure your devices to control them directly from your phone as a universal remote control. And within the gallery has an artificial intelligence editor that allows you to delete objects or people. But I really like the analysis of removing people, because it automatically detects all the people in your photo for you to select them, and individually you can go eliminating them. The result sincerely seems very good, although I think it is a very good one. I think it is a very good editor that also allows you to remove the shadows if you took a picture of your food and the shadow of your cell phone was projected on it, and also allows you to replace the sky so you can see the different effects that you can have if you want to see clouds or want to see the sky completely clear, or even some other effects as if it was dusk and similar. I think the experience of the system is good as far as it goes, but it should also be noted as a negative point that can get to have a lot of bloatware pre-installed with many applications or games you do not need, and can also be sending several notifications with advertising that can become too annoying, especially considering that it is not a low-cost device. A highlight of the system is that it also has an optical motor on the X-axis that will emit a vibration of very good quality to give you a very good hand feedback when interacting with your device. The optical fingerprint reader that is inside the screen works well and allows you to create up to 5 different records with what you have a good experience. Also have the option of shortcuts. Although you cannot configure them, but without releasing your finger, you can access with speed to some tools such as QR code scanner, a search in the web browser, or add an event to the calendar. You can also change the unlock animation in case you want, and also have facial recognition. Although this is quite simple, then it is not so recommended if your priority is security, but many people could add it for convenience, so you're not placing every time your fingerprint or your pattern. However, for those cases, it is best to use the smart unlocking through devices Bluetooth, although in this case is limited only for Xiaomi devices, unlike other Android that can work with any other brand and even based on your location. So I do not like that does not have the extended unlock. If we find in all other Android, your passwords will fill them automatically. Google first will verify if you are you through your fingerprint, but does not seem to work very well in some applications. Inside the File Explorer, you will also find the private files section or secure folder to have a little more privacy. Also includes the second space to have two phones in one same, each space with its own password, their own applications, and their own files. And in the security application, we will also be able to access more settings. For example, we find the lock applications in case you want to verify first with your fingerprint before opening a specific application. Or you can also hide applications from your home screen. Xiaomi does not include a private VPN to protect your Wi-Fi connection, but it does include a security scan against malware, although it does not do it in collaboration with any cybersecurity company. Unlike other manufacturers, also integrates the option of dual applications with what you could clone some applications and use two instances of this same application on the phone. And if you get to lose your phone, remember that there is the option to find your device with Google, but Xiaomi gives you a second option. In fact, a little more robust that is hidden within Xiaomi Cloud must accept all permissions. And for some reason, Xiaomi brings this option off, but definitely it is highly recommended that you enter to turn it on because it is an option, as I say, more robust that will give you more chances to find your phone in case you get to lose it in digital welfare. You know, you can see how much time you consume in each application and manage your children's devices to set limits. And finally, in the emergency options, you can add your personal information, and remember, you can press 5 times the power button to make an emergency call. The battery is 5100 milliamperes. However, I feel it performed well. It did not perform exaggeratedly remarkable, let's say. Yes, I have seen other devices with smaller batteries perform this same figure. However, I do not think it really disappoints the battery. I think it performs well. I do not consider it a point neither good nor bad. Through the software you can configure if you want to have a maximum mode, performance mode that does not worry about saving battery, or you want to activate a normal saving mode to help you on a daily basis, or an ultra battery saving mode that can help you in some emergencies to extend much more your battery life, and even remember that allows you to add some applications that you consider essential to continue using them even within this mode. The charger included in the box is 67 watts, and definitely if you can get to give you a fast charging experience, in my tests with 15 minutes recovered 41% of energy in 30 minutes, reached 70%, and full charge the finished in less than an hour, so that definitely that, yes, can be a strong point, although it has no wireless charging, much less reversible wireless charging, therefore could get to fall short in the launch price of Mexico. And with regarding battery protection, notes that it does include a night charging protection mode, so if you are one of those who leave your cell phone charging all night, you could get to have a slower charge so that your battery is not damaged with such speed by leaving it connected all night, and also has an option to accelerate charging in case you need the fastest charge possible, but does not include a charging lock option in case you are one of those users who need to always have your device plugged into the current. This device does have support for untapped networks, and even if it has support for and without, which is quite remarkable. I think this is one of its strongest features. In case you travel often, I think it will be something very convenient to add a data plan simply by scanning a QR code instead of having to go buy a card without physical, so it is very good. But something I also like is that within the security application also allows you to select which applications will be able to connect to the internet using your mobile data and which applications can only do so via Wi-Fi, so it is quite good. That is very good. But something that I also like is that within the security application also allows you to select which applications will be able to connect to the internet using your mobile data and which applications can only do so through Wi-Fi, so that in this way you have a better control of your data consumption. The device supports Wi-Fi 5 networks, then it is not so modern in this sense, but I think if you can get to give you a good enough download speed, and Bluetooth connectivity remains in version 5.2, so neither integrates the latest. Fortunately, if you have NFC, so you can make mobile payments with this phone, you can use Google Pay, some banking application, or a compatible service in your country. But as you realize, it does not come with FM radio. Has two options for projection wireless, a basic one that will simply be a mirror projection, or also has an option called cast that will allow you to project your screen in a more advanced way. For example, you can project only some documents or only some games, or even allows you to project only an application so you can continue using your cell phone while the projection is done, and some other things like hide notifications and project with the screen off. We will also have Android Auto. And as for sensors, it includes geomagnetic field sensor and orientation sensor, plus gyroscope and light sensor. But it is curious that the proximity sensor does not seem to be recognized in this device. So I would dare to say that it is a rather strange proximity sensor, or it is also likely that it does not include proximity sensor, which would be very odd. Xiaomi has one of the largest ecosystems in terms of the number of devices, even already has TVs and many smart home accessories. So besides the traditional, which would be the Xiaomi Pad, Xiaomi Smart Band, smartwatch and its headphones, you still have many more devices that you can connect with your cell phone, although the interaction does not seem to be as advanced as in other ecosystems like Apple or Samsung or even Huawei, where we see a much better integrated interaction, although with HyperOS Xiaomi intends to improve that, but it is still part of future plans. Note that you have a direct access to Xiaomi Home smart devices directly from the quick settings screen. But if you do not want to use Xiaomi Home, you can also use Google Home, although it would be best to use the brand's own implementation. It also has Mi Share to send files quickly to other Xiaomi devices, or it is also compatible with some other brands. It also has Google Quick Share and Google Fast Pay, so you could also get to link headphones easily. As for cloud storage, Xiaomi has a close collaboration with Google, so from their gallery you can now connect to your Google Photos account to back up all your photos. So it feels like Xiaomi is relying quite heavily on Google right now. Let's talk about performance. This device integrates the Snapdragon 7S Gen 2 processor with 12GB of RAM, and you can even add another 12GB of virtual RAM, although in this case by default gives you configured 4 additional gigabytes, plus there are 2 versions of storage, the basic 256 and the higher 512GB without a doubt. In this case, if you find a positive point because you can back up a lot of information, it took 3.3 seconds approximately to open each of these applications, showing that the performance is really positive. I think the most demanding obviously will be able to find more powerful processors in other devices, but if you're not the most demanding, it will give you a sufficiently fast and sufficiently fluid experience. In this case, is not totally free of some stumbles, as you can get to realize in this device, but I think it can get to feel fluid most of the time. Also notes that the 12GB of RAM, if you get to notice, because we have not seen any application restarts, and in this case we have 16 apps open and it still maintains a pretty fluid and loose performance. I don't think it's going to be a device for users who have to limit themselves by opening few apps in order to maintain good performance, in this case even keeping several apps open. As you can see, the device is still able to maintain a fluid experience. Just remember that despite having a large amount of storage, it does not support microSD, so you are limited in that sense, but the most advisable will be to purchase the end version and in 12GB, so you do not have a worry regarding the storage. Next, let's test how long this device takes by exporting a video of several united clips recorded with this device in 4K with a total duration of 1 minute, and ready, it took 1 minute and 5 seconds, confirming us that it is not a processor suitable for video editing in 4K. Probably this device is going to give you a good experience editing in full HD, but you cannot level up your video editing yet. For games, remember that Xiaomi has a very strange behavior, because inside the security application that has nothing to do with games, you can find access to Game Turbo, although you have to slide down again to discover this icon finally, and when you open it has another name, which is Game Space. In this space, we will be able to have all our games installed. But what more I like is that you can open this section to customize how you want the performance. If you want to give priority to save energy, or you want to give priority to other things like high quality, or you can customize specifically the behavior you want to have. Then I think a considerably good option games run with all this setting in default. Plus, when you open a game, notice that a new tab appears in the upper left corner, where we can have shortcuts to applications, so we can answer any message without the need to leave our game, or we will also have other settings such as cleaning the memory, optimize the connection, and other things. In fact, we can also enable the do not disturb mode or take screenshots. In addition to making a wireless screen projection, we can also make screen recordings to have gameplays, or we can also change the color setting of the screen. depending on the game we are running, finally also allows us to control the Wi-Fi connectivity and the brightness of the screen. And something curious is also that allows us to change the style of notifications with this button. Notice that normally the notification appears on the screen and I can slide it to open a floating window, but if I enable this special notification option, notice how the new style will appear. Notice that it is a notification that is advancing on the screen to not hinder your game. You can also access a voice modifier in case your game supports voice chat, and finally timers that can be useful in games. You need to be aware of how long you've been using certain power. In Call of Duty, this device gives us by default the high quality at a very high frame rate. However, you can also go up to a maximum frame rate while maintaining the high graphic quality, which can become remarkable with respect to the graphic compatibility that reaches. Although it must be said that some effects are disabled and not available, then in this aspect does not show much compatibility. However, with the highest setting that allows, it will give us a very smooth experience. In fact, we could say that it is excellent. It will not have noticeable drops in the frames per second. In fact, in our test, the lowest it was about a few frames per second, so it was very well. Although recording the screen may be able to slightly decrease its performance, but I think it is a device that can give you a good experience in games, unless you are the most demanding in terms of graphics quality. In the Legends game, we changed the auto setting to a high graphics detail setting at 60 frames per second. And as we have seen in other devices, first tries to reach 120 frames per second, and in that part of the game, the truth is that it suffers a lot, is never able to reach 120 and goes a little unstable, but then is limited to 60 frames per second, and in that case manages to return to have a very good stability. And in fact, recording the screen, you will also notice that there are enough cuts. So in these games that begin to be a little more complex, graphically speaking, could get to present a little more hitches when you're playing. None of them shows a total freeze, but definitely not going to be a device capable of giving you a super smooth experience in games like other devices that you could find on the market, even cheaper. In the game of SpongeBob, by default loads the high resolution and also the quality in that configuration at 60 frames per second, and for testing we leave it in that setting. However, it is a bad idea to run this content in this quality, even though it is the default quality, because you are going to notice that it goes with many fluctuations, many drops, and it is not able to reach 60 frames per second constantly, only in some brief moments. Then on this device, we definitely had a very short experience in this game. Surely it will improve the experience if you lower the graphic quality, but it is not ideal in this price range. Experience in this game will surely improve the experience if you lower the graphic quality, but it is not ideal in this price range. And lastly, in Genshin Impact, by default it loads medium quality, but for our test we went up to high quality at 60 frames per second to give it a test according to its price and motion blurring. And the motion blur defaults to high, but we set it to low to be a little more fair. And honestly, the experience of this game was regular, is not able to give 60 frames per second, and you notice several fluctuations. So while it is not a disastrous experience where the device is completely frozen, I think if your priority is gaming, there will be devices that can give you better performance at this price, or even cheaper devices that can give you a similar performance or even superior in some cases. So if your priority is gaming, would not be so advisable to purchase this device. As a conclusion, gives me the feeling that this device could have been better, especially for the high price of the launch of Mexico. I think they should reconsider their pricing strategy in this country. The camera could and should improve through some updates, especially in the behavior that has backlight but has some highlights such as its excellent screen, its fast charging, and also its 200 megapixel camera. I hope you liked this video. If so, you can indicate it, and we'll see you the next one.